After cutting ties with McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo has been invited to potentially join Haas by way of Guenther Steiner. This puts Mick Schumacher's seat in jeopardy as he now needs to score major points in order to keep his F1 seat, and he is essentially just fighting for his F1 career. We have Alpine, who is looking to be a contending team in 2023. And in light of everything going on with the budget cap in 2021 and all the news surrounding Red Bull, teams are asking for Red Bull to be severely punished for what they did in 2021. Let's get right into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Formula One Digest, the new and improved Formula One Digest. Mark, it's lovely to have you on the show. I'm joined by my co-host, Mark. Everybody, there he is. I'm your host, Tyson De Silva, and we are celebrating, or I guess reporting in this new era of F1 Digest on a really interesting story in Daniel Ricciardo, who was initially cut by McLaren for his 2023 seat, but now it looks as though Guenther Steiner has eyes on the, I believe, 8-time race winner. Mark, what would it mean for Daniel Ricciardo to join the Haas team?
Well, it would be a step up for the Haas team, as they would be getting an 8-time race-winning driver. It would be a bit of a step down for Daniel Ricciardo in his career, but he's a driver that understands how to develop cars, working with Red Bull. He understands how to develop setups that really work for both drivers, and he could, really bring the Haas team to the next level in their development, as he could possibly, bring some nifty little tricks and stuff that he's learned from McLaren and Red Bull. It would be interesting to see this move happen. I personally don't think it will happen, but you never know what's going to happen in this F1 silly season.
Yeah, no, definitely. And on the topic of Daniel Ricciardo, of course, he hasn't really had the best career since leaving Red Bull. And I think that what he could do is do a bit of like a rejuvenation process and try to bring his career back to where it once was. And he could do this by going to a team that has had very little success in the last couple of years and be maybe not a contender for race wins, but at least a guy who can get frequent points for the team and help them in their fight for the midfield, and maybe even a top, this might be a stretch for Haas, but maybe a top 4 finish in the constructors. I think that this would be something that would really help his career along. If it doesn't work out, okay, you can clean your hands of it. You really did try everything. But I think that for him to kind of go out and say that he wants to be on a contending team right now, it's just not going to happen, because I just don't think that any team has any more faith that he can get the job done.
No, I think you're on the right track there. A lot of teams probably won't see Daniel in the same kind of light that he was in before he left Red Bull, or even when he was joining the Renault team, now the Alpine team. He's kind of, dropped his stock a little bit in that sense. But you're right. I would compare this to something like what Kyle Busch was doing in NASCAR. He's leaving the Joe Gibbs Racing team, and there was a lot of speculation that he was going to go to the Colleague Racing team, which isn't a big team in NASCAR. And for those of you who know NASCAR, he's now going to a team like RCR. So in comparison, it would be a similar move where he would be, going down to a lower tier team, and Daniel Ricciardo could use that as a rejuvenation, like you said. It would be a bit of a weird move. And like you said, there's not a lot of teams right now that have seats open. Even Ferrari seats are closed off until at least 2025. Mercedes seats are closed off until at least after 2023. So there's not really any space in any top team unless Sergio Perez retires in the next couple years. But I don't see Daniel Ricciardo going back to Red Bull.
Oh, no.
Who knows?
Yeah, no. His shot at Red Bull is completely done, because now they have Nick DeVries, who's going to be their driver for the future, or Yuki Tsunoda. We don't know. A couple other names that could be sprinkled into that mix there for the seat alongside Max Verstappen. But yeah, no, I really just think that if Daniel does want to come back to Formula One, he needs to be a bit more realistic about what he plans on doing. For those of you who may not know, he has said that he is open to still racing, but only for a contending team. And that just doesn't make any sense because, what team is going to want a guy who's kind of washed?
There's no contending team either. There's really no contending team. And like we've said, Alpine becoming a contender in 2023, he's had his shot there. He's not going to get his seat back at Alpine. So that's not going to happen unless, someone like Porsche or Audi comes into the sport and just, pulls a Braun F1 and just goes straight to the top immediately. There's no contending team right now.
Yeah, but even then with Porsche and Audi, because I did think about that as well, they're not coming to the sport until 2026. So by that time, he will be way past his prime. Like, he's probably kind of past his prime now, but he'll be like in his late 30s at the least, I think. I think he's 33 now. So I just don't think that there's room for him on this grid unless he's willing to take a shorter contract on a bottom feeder team. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what kind of happens there. I do agree with you though that the move's most likely just not going to happen. But moving on, Haas does have another seat to make a decision on, and it looks as though Mick Schumacher is in a bit of a hot seat as he is now going to be fighting for his F1 career, folks. And this is really strange news because a lot of you are probably saying, wow, Mick Schumacher fighting for his F1 seat. He's had a pretty decent year. If you really look at it, he's cost the team a lot of money with some crashes that he's had. And Haas isn't exactly the most rich team on the grid. Unless Gene is just hiding like a money pool under his house. It's going to be really tough for Mick to stay in F1 at this stage because there are a lot of other drivers in F2 or in other racing leagues that are doing much better than he is in an F1 car. And you look at the success that he's had and even what Haas has had in general, it hasn't been as promising of a year as we thought it was going to be. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on what Mick's situation is and what it's going to be looking like as we head into the last couple races?
Well, he's got to score points. It's as simple as that. If he doesn't, I don't think he's going to be on the grid unless, Williams ends up snatching him up. But that's another thing. The seat in Williams is, a toss-up between Logan Sargent and Mick Schumacher right now. If his seat doesn't get secured at Haas, Gene has said that he's cost the team more money than he was willing to spend on the F1 development at the Haas team. But, it was nice to see a Schumacher in the sport. There's another down in F3 right now. That's Ralph Schumacher's son. Maybe he can get his F1 chance. But, Mick might need to take a year off, reevaluate some things, go do another championship or something. The WEC, the World Endurance Championship. He could even look at going into sports cars, coming over to America. He might need to do something like that. Him and Daniel might need to, go off for a year and then come back and see what opportunities there are. We have spoken a lot about the opportunities at Porsche and Audi in 2026 when they come onto the grid. But, it's kind of looking like a dire situation right now for Mick.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I just think that when it comes to Mick's career, it's almost giving me like a bit of a Nick DeVries vibe, like in the sense that like he's an F2 champ, but is he ready for F1? Because in his first season he didn't do much, but to be fair, the car was not good at all, and it's not like Nikita Mazepin had much luck next to him. But if you look at But if you look at this year, Kevin Magnussen has done some pretty incredible things in that Haas car. A couple of Q3 finishes. Mick has been there too. But out of the two Haas drivers, I still think that Kevin has had a better year. And even that's not saying much because Kevin hasn't had that great of a year. It's like it's one of those things where maybe he might end up going to Formula E, but his only real hope is to go to Williams, in my opinion, because I think after he severed his ties with Ferrari earlier this year, it really just didn't help his relationship with the Haas team, who are run by a Ferrari engine.
Yeah, and I don't think Formula E is good for him. But I was gonna say, is Yuki Tsunoda valued higher than Mick Schumacher is right now? Because Yuki's career didn't start off anywhere near as great as Mick Schumacher's career did either. So are we valuing Yuki's start in F1 higher than Mick's start in F1? I mean, his teammate last year was no litmus of any sort, so we can't really compare those two. And now with Kevin Magnussen, I've kind of seen some cracks in Kevin Magnussen's F1 journey this season as well. I mean, it's not been the most spotless. He has had several DNFs, several pointless races. And like the honeymoon stage could be over for Kevin. It was nice to see him come back. But, is that second Haas seat also in jeopardy as well? Could Kevin end up leaving the team? He wasn't happy in 2019 before his exit. And, I could see him kind of walking out if 2023 doesn't go any better than this year.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's just going to be, it's going to be entirely up to whether or not Haas is able to improve. And there was a stretch where they were like a decent looking team that had a lot of promise, and then I'm not sure what happened, but everything just went down the drain for them, and they had 2 or 3 terrible years with Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen. Kevin takes the year off and Romain goes to IndyCar, and there was so much hope at the start of the year where after that Bahrain finish where Kevin was he finished in P7 or something like that, no? And
yeah, finished in the points.
Yeah, and Mick got his first points, and he had a good fight with Max Verstappen back in the British Grand Prix. The potential is there, but it's a question I think now of, will that success continue to build in 2023? And it even questions whether or not Haas will be a team in the next couple of years. Like,
I don't really see that happening. She has threatened to pull his funding out of the team, and he funds, I want to see something like 90% of that team. And, if his money leaves, the team leaves the grid, and then we're down to 9 teams. Yeah. Well, I don't think we'd be down to 9 teams. We'd probably end up getting some shoe-in team that, probably would become like a Manor or like a Marussia team, kind of filling the spot until more teams join the grid. But, it does question whether or not the Haas team is in it for the right reasons.
Yep. So that's definitely going to be something we need to watch out for as not just this season ends, but also as we head into 2023, and we need to see the overall, just the progression of this car, because a lot of good things have happened for them, but a lot of bad things have happened too. And I think right now more bad things have outweighed the good that has happened. But speaking of good cars, we're going to transition over to a much happier team in Alpine. And Mark, this is a team that I think has a lot of potential, and a recent report has indicated that they may be looking to be contenders in 2023. And I don't know about you, but that has me absolutely juiced up for the idea that we may be getting another team fighting for the championship or the constructors, or just big points. Because this year has been such a good year for Alpine in the sense that Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon, I think, have had their strongest year compared to last year. I think they both have looked really great. A lot of Q3 finishes. Fernando Alonso has just driven the rails off of that car, and sometimes driven it into other cars. But but I just think that it's going to be so exciting to see how they progress in the next year, because they have looked like one of the stronger teams out of all the midfield teams.
They have one of the fastest cars in a straight line right now. That brings up the question: is the move to Aston Martin a mistake on Fernando Alonso's half? Does he have insider information about the Alpine team that scared him into leaving to go to Aston Martin? Are these are these conspiracies even true about whether or not this car is going to be a contender? I know Mercedes is out of the picture, and there's been even questions about whether or not they're going to be in the title fight for 2023. So it would be nice to see Alpine. It would kind of be weird to see Fernando Alonso leave the team just as it reaches its peak. I mean, when Daniel Ricciardo joined the team in 2019, it was on an upward trajectory. I mean, they were developing the car well. The car seemed to work, well when it was in the hands of Daniel and Nico Hülkenberg. 2020 was kind of an off season. 2021 was even better. They got a win. And 2022, they have one of the fastest engines on the F1 grid right now. So, if that development keeps going, it could very well be a contender for 2023. But, with Fernando Alonso leaving, it kind of leaves me in kind of a gray area whether or not I want to believe these rumors to be true, because you might know something that we don't. Also, the management structure of the Alpine team is all over the place, and it doesn't really seem to be working well with each other. And now with Otmar Zafnauer as team principal, he's kind of brought a few teams down over the years. I mean, when he was with Force India and with Aston Martin and Racing Point before then, the morale kind of went down in the team, and he kind of seemed to be the brick in the cog, I guess you could say.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that it's really interesting that Fernando Alonso chose to leave what right now is a better team for a team that isn't looking super promising right now in Aston Martin. They've been decent in the last couple of races, but even then it hasn't been the best. So yeah, looking at that move, it makes you wonder what happened, because it seemed to be a pairing that was working great, but when it came to his contract, I wonder if maybe there was some debate or something that they couldn't really settle on. I have a feeling a bit of it was the term on the contract for Fernando. And maybe he was looking for, because I think how many years did he sign with Aston Martin, for 2?
Yeah, I think it was 2. I think it was actually 3. It was a longer term contract with Aston Martin.
Yeah, and I just wonder if Aston Martin was willing to offer him more years, and Alpine wasn't willing to do that because they had Esteban Ocon, but they also had Oscar Piastri at the time, who was supposed to be their next great driver. I just wonder if there were some issues there.
But that does make me question, if they weren't willing to sign Fernando and were kind of pushing him out the door, why didn't they make the move for Oscar Piastri? Why did they let him slide out the door along with Fernando Alonso if they were going to have a car in 2023 that could have been a title contender? It wasn't looking like Oscar was going to get a seat in 2023 anyways. It was looking like it was going to be 2024. But, with that information, why, like, they didn't have any other prospects in their driver academy. It was just Oscar. They didn't seem to have any interest in picking up Teo Porcher, who was one of their other drivers, which now kind of seems in limbo with whether or not he's ever going to get an F1 seat. So was there some big plan to bring someone else through, or what was going on there?
The only answer I have for you is Otmar Safnar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we saw the post. We saw the post from Fernando when Otmar was saying that he was on a boat and he bits it.
Yeah, so I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see what really happens with Alpine. We still got to get through this season, so we will see what happens with the Alpine team as we head into the end of the season, and we'll see, and we'll track their progress as the off season goes on. Moving on to some other news, guys. As many of you will remember, Red Bull was accused of and was proven to have gone over the 2021 budget cap, and this resulted in them, basically getting another asterisk on that already controversial championship last year. But there hasn't been much of a penalty that has been given since then. If you want to see all the details of that, it's on our last video that we posted. But going into some new details that have come out, there are tons of teams right now that are really upset about it and want to see Red Bull punished for going over the cap. And they want to see not just a minor punishment, they want to see a severe punishment, Mark. And do you think that this is justified? Because we have a couple of guys like Zach Brown and Toto Wolff who are like absolutely just livid about it.
Well, I mean, I would see why someone like Toto Wolff would be livid about it. His driver did lose the championship off of it, but they didn't lose the Constructors' Championship. They did end up winning that. So, I mean, if Lewis really wants to win his championship this way, I mean, so be it. It's going to be his 8th, but there's going to be an asterisk next to that 8th World Championship. It wasn't won on track. It was clearly won by Max. And I really don't think that, well, it really all depends on what that extra, I think, $5 million was spent on. It could have been spent on something like a staff salary. It could have been spent on something other than what the car's development needed to give them that championship. So we'd have to figure out where that $5 million overspend was before we start saying that they were cheating and say that they developed their car further, because they were on even pace with Mercedes at the end of the season. We saw Lewis Hamilton in the second last race in Brazil drive from 20th to 1st, ending up winning the Brazilian Grand Prix. Max couldn't even keep up with him. They weren't able to keep up there. They weren't able to keep up in Mexico, although didn't he win that race in Mexico? Didn't Max win that?
Yeah, Max, it was a Red Bull 1-3 with Checo getting 3. No, 1-3. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, the margins were so close last year. I mean, Mercedes was spending hundreds of millions of dollars more before this budget cap era, and I believe they were one of the teams that objected originally to the budget cap rules.
Of course.
And it's kind of throwing F1 for a loop. I mean, no one wants to see anyone cheating to win a championship. I know Michael Schumacher had his flaws when he pushed Damon Hill off the track.
Classic Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, championships have been won that way before in the past, but I don't want to see Lewis win his 8th just because of a technicality in the rule book where Red Bull spent $5 million more than they were supposed to, and that $5 million might not have even been spent on the car. I believe the budget cap rules are anything from staff salaries, lodging, anything like that. It's basically the full accounting book for that fiscal year on the team. So it'll be interesting to see what the FIA does. They are impartial to take any influence from any other team. If that happens, that would be cheating on that other team's end. If any other team tries to interfere with this investigation, I mean, then they're cheating. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an up and down roller coaster. I'd be remiss to see if they take Max's world championship away, because now all over social media and all over F1 in the media, it's 2 times world champion, hashtag to the max.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's going to be a huge PR nightmare if that happens. And, I don't know if they're going to take that away from him. I would more or less probably end up seeing a slap on the wrist with like a reprimand or a fine, which again doesn't really make sense. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I don't think that Lewis as a competitor wants to win under a technicality. Like I unless he's that petty about what happened last year, I do not think that he wants to win in that way. He wants to win it on the track and be able to celebrate with his team. It would feel like a half a win if you were to do it this way. So I don't think anything like that's going to happen. I know we did talk about Max potentially getting stripped of his first world title, but I think now, like you said, now that he has his second, it's really tough to do that, especially after the way he got it again in Japan, where he was fully convinced that he wasn't the champion, and then all of a sudden there's that viral clip where he's like, "But I'm not. I am? Are you sure?" Like no,
yeah,
like
it's so strange.
Yeah, the FIA has kind of goofed a bit there, but yeah, until we really hear anything, I agree. I just unless it was something to do with the car, I don't see them getting a major type of penalty for it. No,
I don't see it. And even Lewis said if Mercedes had spent an extra $500,000 on a new floor, he would have won the championship. But $500,000 goes a long way when you're talking salaries. I mean, how many people that pays for an entire year? Probably actually just one. It probably just pays Adrian Newey's salary for a year.
I'll take that for sure. Let me know if you want to switch lives. Yeah, honestly.
That's a low ball. He probably gets paid like, I don't know, $10 million a year for developing a championship-winning car.
Well, he's going to get a big bonus after this year, especially if they beat the wins record that's been set, because they're very close. So that's something we also got to look out for. Yeah. But if you guys have made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're so excited to have the face cams and enter this new kind of era of F1 Digest. And don't forget to share with all your friends. And we'll see you guys in the next video.